Chapter 31 of Stories from Pentamerone. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Joy Chan. Stories from Pentamerone by Giambattista Basile. Chapter 31. The Three Citrons. Well was it in truth said by the wise man, "Do not say all you know, nor do all you are able. For both one and the other bring unknown danger and unforeseen ruin. And you shall hear of a certain slave, be it spoken with all reverence for my lady the princess, who, after doing all the injury in her power to a poor girl, came off so badly in the court that she was the judge of her own crime, and sentenced herself to the punishment she deserved. The King of Longtower had once a son, who was the apple of his eye, and on whom he had built all his hopes. And he longed impatiently for the time when he should find some good match for him. But the Prince was so averse to marriage, and so obstinate, that whenever a wife was talked of, he shook his head and wished himself 100 miles off. So that the poor King, finding his son stubborn and perverse, and foreseeing that his race would come to an end, was more vexed and melancholy, cast down and out of spirits, than a merchant whose correspondent has become bankrupt, or a peasant whose ass has died. Neither could the tears of his father move the Prince, nor the entreaties of the courtiers soften him, nor the counsel of wise men make him change his mind. In vain they set before his eyes the wishes of his father, the wants of the people, his own interest, representing to him that he was the full stop in the line of the royal race. For with the obstinacy of Corella, and the stubbornness of an old mule with a skin 4 fingers thick, he had planted his foot resolutely, stopped his ears, and closed his heart against all assaults. But as frequently more comes to pass in an hour than in 100 years. And no one can say, stop here or go there. It happened that one day, when all were at table and the Prince was cutting a piece of new-made cheese, whilst listening to the chit-chat that was going on, he accidentally cut his finger, and 2 drops of blood, falling upon the cheese, made such a beautiful mixture of colours that, either it was a punishment inflicted by love, or the will of heaven to console the poor father, the whim seized the Prince to find a woman exactly as white and red as that cheese tinged with blood. Then he said to his father, "Sir, unless I have a wife as white and red as this cheese, it is all over with me. So now resolve, if you wish to see me alive and well, to give me all I require to go through the world in search of a beauty exactly like this cheese, or else I shall end my life and die by inches." When the King heard this mad resolution, he thought the house was falling about his ears. His colour came and went. But as soon as he recovered himself and could speak, he said, "My son, the life of my soul, the core of my heart, the prop of my old age, what mad-brained fancy has made you take leave of your senses? Have you lost your wits? You want either all or nothing. First you wish not to marry, on purpose to deprive me of an heir, and now you are impatient to drive me out of the world. Whither, oh whither would you go wandering about, wasting your life? And why leave your house, your hearth, your home? You know not what toils and perils he brings on himself, who goes rambling and roving. Let this whim pass, my son. Be sensible, and do not wish to see my life worn out, this house fall to the ground, my household go to ruin." But these and other words went in at one ear and out at the other, and were all cast upon the sea. And the poor King, seeing that his son was as immovable as a rock upon a belfry, gave him a handful of dollars and 2 or 3 servants, and bidding him farewell, he felt as if his soul were torn out of his body. Then weeping bitterly he went to a balcony, and followed his son with his eyes until he was lost to sight. The Prince departed, leaving his unhappy father to his grief, and hastened on his way through fields and woods, over mountain and valley, hill and plain, visiting various countries, and mixing with various peoples, and always with his eyes wide awake to see whether he could find the object of his desire. At the end of several months he arrived at the coast of France, where, leaving his servants at a hospital with sore feet, he embarked alone in a Genoese boat and set out towards the Straits of Gibraltar. There he took a larger vessel and sailed for the Indies, seeking everywhere, from kingdom to kingdom, from province to province, from country to country, from street to street, from house to house, in every hole and corner, whether he could find the original likeness of that beautiful image which he had pictured in his heart. And he wandered about and about until at length he came to the island of the ogresses, where he cast anchor and landed. There he found an old, old woman, withered and shrivelled up, and with a hideous face, to whom he related the reason that had brought him to the country. The old woman was beside herself with amazement when she heard the strange whim and the fancy of the Prince, and the toils and perils he had gone through to satisfy himself. Then she said to him, "Hasten away, my son, for if my 3 daughters meet you, I would not give a farthing for your life. Half alive and half roasted, a frying pan would be your bier, and a belly your grave. And away with you as fast as a hare, and you will not go far before you find what you are seeking." When the Prince heard this, frightened, terrified, and aghast, he set off running at full speed, and ran till he came to another country, where he again met an old woman, more ugly even than the first, to whom he told all his story. Then the woman said to him in like manner, "Away with you, unless you wish to serve as a breakfast to the little ogresses my daughters. But go straight on, and you will soon find what you want." The Prince, hearing this, set off running as fast as a dog with a kettle at its tail, and he went on until he met another old woman, who was sitting upon a wheel, with a basket full of little pies and sweetmeats on her arm, and feeding a number of jackasses, which thereupon began leaping about on the bank of a river and kicking at some poor swans. When the Prince came up to the old woman, after making 100 salams, he related to her the story of his wanderings, whereupon the old woman, comforting him with kind words, gave him such a good breakfast that he licked his fingers after it, and when he had done eating, she gave him 3 citrons, which seemed to be just fresh gathered from the tree. And she gave him also a beautiful knife, saying, "You are now free to return to Italy, for your labour is ended, and you have what you were seeking. Go your way, therefore, and when you are near your own kingdom, stop at the first fountain you come to, and cut a citron. Then a fairy will come forth from it, and will say to you, 'Give me to drink.' Mind and be ready with the water, or she will vanish like quicksilver. But if you are not quick enough with the second fairy, have your eyes open, and be watchful that the third does not escape you, giving her quickly to drink, and you shall have a wife after your own heart." The Prince, overjoyed, kissed the old woman's hairy hand 100 times, which seemed just like a hedgehog's back. Then taking his leave he left that country, and coming to the seashore sailed for the Pillars of Hercules, and arrived at our sea, and after 1,000 storms and perils he entered port a day's distance from his own kingdom. There he came to a most beautiful grove, where the shades formed a palace for the meadows, to prevent their being seen by the sun. And dismounting at a fountain, which with a crystal tongue was inviting the people to refresh their lips, he seated himself on a Syrian carpet formed by the plants and flowers. Then he drew his knife from the sheath, and began to cut the first citron, when lo! there appeared like a flash of lightning a most beautiful maiden, white as milk and red as a strawberry, who said, "Give me to drink." The Prince was so amazed, bewildered, and captivated with the beauty of the fairy, that he did not give her the water quick enough, so she appeared and vanished at one and the same moment. Whether this was a rap on the Prince's head, let any one judge who, after longing for a thing, gets it into his hands and instantly loses it again. Then the Prince cut the second citron, and the same thing happened again, and this was a second blow he got on his pate. So making 2 little fountains of his eyes, he wept face to face, tear for tear, drop for drop, with the fountain. And sighing, he exclaimed, "Good heavens! How is it that I am so unfortunate? Twice I have let her escape, as if my hands were